Okay, so we're going to treat these J's as I's. I just thought this formula problem was a really good problem because it relates to science. I just didn't have time to ask the science teachers today what they use it for. But what we're going to do is we're going to use these J's like we do I's. And we're going to use the FOIL method. So the formula is V equals CI. So we're going to write V equals, the C is 2 minus 4J. And we're just going to act like those J's are imaginary numbers. They're I's. And then we're going to multiply it by the I, and the I part of the equation is 3 minus 2J. So we're going to FOIL just like we normally would FOIL. So we're going to do 2 times 2. I'm sorry, that's not a 2, that's 3. So 2 times 3, and you're going to get 6. Then we're going to do 2 times negative 2J, which is negative 4J. Then we're going to do negative 4J times 3, which is negative 12J. And then we're going to do negative 4 times negative 2, which is positive 8J squared. So now we have this expression. So again, you guys, we use the FOIL method, and we can leave the 6. Negative 4J and negative 12J are negative 16J. And remember that we're treating the J squared like an I squared. So anytime you see an I squared, it becomes a negative 1. That's what we did in the first video. So anytime you see an I squared, it becomes a negative 1. So then I'm going to rewrite it one more time. 8 times negative 1 is negative 8. 6, and now we can combine like terms. So remember, we're still on the V equals 6 minus 8 is negative 2. And then we just put the negative 16J, and that's my final answer. Okay. You guys, we just use the J's. It's something that you'll see in science. Most of the time we'll use it, we'll be using I's. Okay, so now number 12 and number 13. I don't know if you remember, but back in algebra, we would rationalize the denominator. And what that means is you can't have a square root in the denominator. Well, in Algebra 2, when we're dealing with complex numbers, you can't have a complex number in the denominator. So we are going to multiply by the conjugate. And the conjugate, and you guys can't see that, we're going to multiply by the conjugate. And the conjugate is going to be this number with the opposite sign. So we're going to have negative 2i over 3 plus 5i. Yes, I am rewriting it because I write too big. And I'm going to multiply it by the conjugate. The conjugate is 3 minus 5i. 3 minus 5i. And now we're going to multiply, literally. So I'm going to do 2i times 3, and I'm going to do 2i times 5i. Well, negative 2i times 3 is negative 6i. Negative 2i times negative 5i is positive 10i squared. Yes, anytime you multiply an I times an I, you still get I squared. Now we're going to multiply the denominator, and we're going to use the FOIL method just like we usually do. So we're going to do 3 times 3. We're going to do 3 times negative 5i. We're going to do 5i times 3. And I'm going to do 5i times negative 5i. And that becomes negative 25i squared. Okay, so the reason you multiply by the conjugate is because you need not to have any i's. So I'm going to rewrite this problem. Negative 6i is going to stay. There's nothing's going to change there. 10 times I negative 1, because I squared equals negative 1. This 3 stays the same. Negative 15i and 15i cancel out, and then I'm left with minus 25 times negative 1. Now we're going to come over here because I ran out of room. That shouldn't surprise anybody at home. Negative 6i minus 10 over. Did you guys notice that I made a mistake? Why, yes. Yes, I did, Miss Flurry. Yes, you do not know what 3 times 3 is. Yes, 3 times 3 is not 3. If you were in class, you'd be like, hey, Miss Flurry, 3 times 3 is not 3. Yes, you're right. 3 times 3 is 9. This is 9 right here. So this would become 9 plus 25, which is 34. Now, I'm going to rewrite it because in the video, I'm sure that you might have heard me say the real part always comes first. So the real part is negative 10 over 34. The imaginary part is 6i over 34. And I know what you're thinking. Do we have to reduce it? Yes, you have to reduce it because you can't leave fractions like this. So again, you guys, just remember that the real part comes first. That's why I did the negative 10 over 34. Okay, so how can you reduce this by, you can reduce it by 2. So you would get negative 5 over 17 minus 3i over 17. And that is your answer. You guys are doing great for me. I know you are. Okay, let's do number 13 now. Again, we're going to multiply it by the conjugate because you can't have an imaginary number in the denominator. Let's see. 2 plus I over 1 minus I. We're going to need to multiply by the conjugate. And the conjugate is 1 plus I, 1 plus I, because it was 1 minus I. Now we're going to FOIL. 2 times 1, so we're going to FOIL. 2 times 1, 2 times negative 1. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times I is 2i. Then we're going to do I times 1, which is positive 1i, and then I times I, which is I squared, over 1 times 1, 1 times I, negative I times 1, and negative I times I, which is negative I squared. And you guys, you can't, remember the reason we're doing this is because you can't have a complex number in the denominator. And I know right now it looks like all these i's, and just think of, right now, think of an I as a variable. It's not really a variable, it's an imaginary number, but if it helps you, think about it as a variable. So in the numerator, I can have 2i plus 1i is 3i, and I squared is negative 1. In the denominator, you guys, in the denominator, these two things are always going to cancel each other out because we're not allowed to have any i's. I have a 1. These cancel each other out, and then this becomes minus negative 1 because I squared is negative 1. Now we're gonna do it all at once. So I have 2 minus 1, which is 1, plus the 3i. 1 minus negative 1 is 2. So the other one, we didn't leave it that way. That was because you had to reduce it. But this one, I don't have to reduce because one, you can leave it like this, or I would take it like this. but you don't necessarily have to do it like this because this one you can't reduce, and on number 12 you needed to. I will put more videos up. I just think that we need to do a little bit more practice, but this should get you started. Thanks, guys, and have a great day.